Hello and welcome back to our YouTube channel, all my viewers. Now today we are going to start yet another poem. I know why the caged bird sings for ICSE class 10, and the poem is written by Maya Angelou. Let us first know about Maya Angelou. She was born on April 4 in 1928 in America. But at the age of 3, her parents got divorced, and as a result of that, she was sent to live with her grandmother, and her grandmother was living in Arkansas. But at that time in Arkansas, there was a lot of problem related to racism, and she was also discriminated because of that racism. One that she was black, and apart from being black, she was a woman, so she faced double problems there. She was marginalized on the basis of her race, her color, as well as her gender. And when she was a child, no, she faced a lot of assault, and because of that, she had lost her voice also. And later on, she regained. That is why this poem is also having an autobiographical element in it that we will discuss later on in our video. And apart from that, she was a powerful feminist writer, children. When she grew up, she became a writer of Afro American ethnicity, and she was very well known. And apart from that, she was also a civil rights activist, and she had worked very closely with Martin Luther King and Malcolm X for civil rights or for the rights of the Black Americans. This poem, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. It was written in 1969, and it talks about her life up to the age of 17. And this poem got a lot of international recognition, and everybody appreciated this poem a lot. And if we look at this caged bird, this is actually a symbolism that has been used in this poem. So the bird in the cage is a symbol of African Americans and their freedom for, their fight for freedom. And it also shows us the struggle of Black Americans. And there is a comparison between the free bird and a caged bird in this poem that we will learn in detail in the coming part of the video. So, children, before we start understanding the meaning of the stanzas, it's good to know the background or the context in which this poem was written by Maya Angelou. So, in this poem, Maya Angelou is actually projecting two contrasting images of a free bird and a caged bird. So, this poem is metaphorically representing the differences between white Americans that are free birds and the African Americans that are caged birds. And this is in the context of civil rights movement in American society. Through this poem, Maya Angelou expresses her agonies and grievances or complaints through the restricted flight of the caged bird. Like, she's talking about the restrictions that are put on the African Americans in the American society. So the caged bird thus represents the African American race, and the caged bird is struggling to carve a peaceful environment for itself in this racist society. That you will read in the poem in the coming stanzas, that it screams, in spite of being in the cage, the bird screams for freedom, sings for freedom. So it is showing that in spite of the oppression, the African Americans are trying to raise their voice, and they are fighting for their civil rights. Until 1965, under a system of racial segregation known as Jim Crow law, in the southern United States, African Americans lived in poverty because of these laws. So they were denied the right to vote, to organize a meeting, or to gather together, owing to their skin color. Why they were not given their rights? Because of their skin color. And they were not allowed to use the same transport, the same public toilets, or to study in the same school as the whites. So in this scenario, Maya Angelou is raising her voice for freedom of the African Americans through writing this poem. So the caged bird is therefore representing the community that was prevented from social, religious, and cultural freedom on account of the color of their skin. So the caged bird could not fly anywhere at his own will and choice because of the suppression, because of the confinement, because of the oppression, but it is not losing its hope for freedom. That is why it's raising its voice. So now let us first read stanza 1 of this poem. A free bird leaps on the back of the wind and floats downstream till the current ends, and dips his wing in the orange sun rays and dares to claim the sky. Now, first let us understand the difficult word meanings. And the word leaps here means jumps or bounds quickly and energetically. So the bird is leaping here. Second is the word downstream. Downstream is like in the direction of the flow of a stream or a river or air. Then comes current. Current is the steady and continuous flow of a river or a stream. And here dips means lowers or briefly immerses a part of something into liquid, or in this case coming down, like, the bird comes down and again flies upwards. And then orange sun rays. So actually orange sun rays are the symbolic representation of free and lively atmosphere. Like when you see orange sunlight, how what do you feel? It's like, it gives a feeling of happiness, and creates a lively atmosphere around us. And then comes rays. Rays are actually sun rays, beams of light that radiates from sun. And dares. Dares means like, he has the courage or the audacity to do something challenging or risky. Now let us understand the meaning of this stanza. Here the poet introduces us to a free bird, and it is symbolizing the concept of freedom and unrestricted movement of this bird. The bird's actions are described as it leaps and flies effortlessly, almost as if it is using the wind itself. It says, no, on the back of the wind as a pathway to navigate through the air. And this is suggesting that the bird is completely at ease with the natural flow of the environment. Next, and floats downstream till the current ends. So here the bird is portrayed as going with the flow of a stream of air and floating downstream. Now, like when you must have seen a bird flying in the sky, goes up and down and up and down like that. So, and it does not have any specific destination in its mind. It's just enjoying the freedom it has by leaping on the back of the wind and now floating downstream till the current ends. So this illustrates the bird's ability to enjoy the natural currents of life without any restrictions, without any limitations. And it also shows us a carefree and easygoing existence. There is no foundation on this bird's movement. Next, and dips his wing in the orange sun rays. So here the poet is trying to capture a moment where the bird dips its wing in the brightly shining sun rays. And this is actually symbolizing the joyful connection of this free bird with the environment. That means the bird is happy and enjoying in its free environment. So this image of the bird, which is dipping its wings in the orange sun rays, represents the bird's ability to fully experience the beauty around it. And next, and dares to claim the sky. So finally, at the end, the poet is changing the tone of this one. All this while in the above lines, it's showing a very nice image of a bird which is flying freely in the sky, going wherever it wants without any specific destination to go, and enjoying its beautiful and lively environment where the orange sun is shining brightly, and it has no restriction on its movement. But in the end, the tone changes in the last line, and dares to claim the sky. That means it shows some kind of authority or some kind of, like, or audacity of this bird in claiming the entire sky as its own. So here the poet has completely changed the tone in order to tell us that the bird is claiming something that might not be belonging to only this particular bird. It might be belonging to someone else also. But this bird has a strong sense of ownership and entitlement, as if the entire sky belongs to it. So this bold dominance again reinforces that the freedom and the liberation that this bird has doesn't have any kind of limitation. So now let us understand the context of the stanza. So this free bird not only has the freedom to roam wherever it wants, but it also feels powerful. Notice the lines, dares to clean the sky. All this while, the poet is showing us a beautiful image of the bird flying in the sky and enjoying its freedom. But in the last line, suddenly there's a twist. And why this has been done? It is to show that the free bird believes that its freedom allows it to claim ownership over something that does not belong to it. It is saying that whatever is around me, it belongs to me. So actually, children, this is actually referring to the white Americans in this stanza. So the poet is actually talking about the racism and discrimination against African Americans. That is what she is conveying in this poem. So she's is saying that the white Americans enjoyed full freedom without any restrictions. So this allusion also begins to show that this poem is an extended metaphor. Metaphor means the free bird is a metaphor used for white Americans. And why is it extended? Because it is being used in the entire poem. Okay, so this metaphor is for the oppression experienced by marginalized communities, in this case, the Black Americans in the United States of America. So the free bird experiences are later contrasted with those of the caged bird, meaning that the free bird represents the benefits, the freedom that is provided to a dominating social group. So now let us read the second stanza. But a bird that stalks down his narrow cage can seldom see through his bars of rage. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. So first, let us understand the word meanings. But a bird that stalks, stalks here means move carefully or cautiously. Narrow is like a very confined space, limited space. Cage is this enclosure and can seldom see through. Seldom means very rarely, not very often. And bars are the rods of this cage. They have a symbolic meaning that I will explain you later in the poem explanation. Rage is bars of rage. Rage means extreme anger and fury. Then his wings are clipped. Clipped means cut short, and feet are tied. Then and so he opens his throat. Opens means he starts to sing. So now let us understand the meaning line by line. So but a bird that stalks. It means the bird. Which bird? Now the poet is talking about a caged bird in this stanza, and its entire existence is in a confinement, in a cage. So the bird is moving very carefully within the narrow space of its cage and can seldom see through his bars of rage. It is unable to see beyond that confinement. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied. It means its wings have been cut down, shortened, and its feet are tied. What is it representing? It is representing the limitation and the restrictions that are imposed upon this caged bird. So, so he opens his throat to sing. So, in an act of defiance or in an act of expressing itself, the caged bird opens its throat to sing. So, what does it actually mean? It is saying that on one hand we have a free bird which has limitless freedom, no foundation, and on the other hand we have a caged bird whose enslavement is represented through its wings that are clipped, its feet that are tied. This bird is not at all free to fly in the sky, and his vision of the freedom is also not clear, because in this fury, rage, no, he's angry. He, in his anger, he cannot see beyond the confinement. His vision of freedom is only not there, and it is caged, it is imprisoned. So all these confinements, all these limitations, all this suppression has created a feeling of rage and fury and anger in this bird. He is furious, but he is helpless. He cannot do anything. So, what is the only thing that it can do? The bird is opening its throat to sing for freedom. So, basically, this stanza is the symbolic representation of the African Americans who faced a lot of discrimination in the society, where they were completely alienated and they had no freedom to do whatever they want as the citizens of America. So the poet is raising voice against this suppression, and she's writing this poem, and she is putting the caged bird as a symbol of the African Americans who have no freedom, and they are completely in the under the restrictions, and they are in the suppressed state. So here this opens his throat. This is actually symbolizing the bird's resilience and its use of its voice to communicate and express its emotions. In spite of being in the confinement, in spite of being in frustration because of its condition that are not good, it is trying to convey a message for freedom. So, what is the main theme of these two stanzas? This is play of contrast. If you see the stanza one, that the bird is completely free, and in contrast to that, the condition of a caged bird is totally opposite. So, this contrast is used to heighten the effect of differences between two or more entities. Here, One is free bird, the white Americans, and the second is caged bird, that is the African Americans. So the injustices done to the African Americans can be deeply felt and understood only when we see these in contrast to each other. So, in the first stanza, the poet is appreciating the natural beauty of the sky and the bird in its natural habitat, and it is enjoying full freedom. What follows next in the stanza 2? This is completely in a stark contrast to the first stanza, and the poet is using the word but because it sets a tone that something opposite to what has been told in stanza 1 is coming in stanza 2. So, it is preparing us for this contrast between these two birds. So this bird, the bird in the second stanza, the caged bird, is not free and one who stalks down his narrow cage. Next stanza, the caged bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still, and his tune is heard on the distant hill. For the caged bird sings for of freedom. So, children, actually, this poem doesn't have a particular rhyme scheme, but few words are rhyming here and there, like here, trill, still, hill, okay, a herd, bird. So, notice all these things also. Now let us understand the word meanings. So the word fearful is like full of fear and apprehension. Trill is a like sound that is unsteady because you it happens mainly when we are fearful or nervous or afraid. Like sometimes the pitch of the sound is too high, whereas sometimes it's too low. And of things unknown, like things here, some ideas. And unknown that still is not knowing, mysterious, unfamiliar, then longed for. Longed for means it has a desire, a strong desire for something. And his tune is heard. Tune is means the sound that this bird is making. Okay, and heard is means it's being heard, it's being listened. In distant, distant means a far away space. And hill, you all know what a hill is, like a raised area of a land. Now, the cage bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown. Now the cage bird is singing, but there's a fear, there's a tremble in its sound when it is singing. And of things unknown. What are the unknown things? The freedom. This bird is not sure of its freedom. There's only a sense that it might come in future. So, but long for still, and his tune is heard on the distant hill. He realizes his condition, but still it's longing for its freedom. And the poet reveals that the bird is crying for the freedom, and it's expecting that it will be heard at a far away place. So now let us notice it line by line. Okay, so the stanza begins by describing the caged bird singing as a fearful trill. Now it is singing, but it has a fear. So what it is suggesting that while the bird sings, there is an underlying sense of fear and doubt. So the bird's song becomes a voice that carries its emotion. It's longing for the freedom. This bird wants to come out of this cage, but it has the limitations. Okay, but in spite of these limitations, the bird is raising its voice for freedom. Now, next, of things unknown. The caged bird's song is described as expressing things unknown but longed for still. So, what does it mean? It says that the bird sings not only for its present circumstances but also for its aspirations and dreams that remain unfulfilled. It embodies the longing for freedom, for experiences which will take this bird beyond this confinement, beyond this cage. So the imagery of the caged bird's tune being heard on the distant hill again reinforces the idea that its song transcends or crosses the physical boundaries and reaches to the far away places. That means there will be someone who will hear this bird's cries and this bird's longing for freedom. So it implies that the bird's voice carries beyond its immediate surrounding and it is reaching to others who may also understand the desire for freedom, and they will empathize with the struggle of this bird. So this stanza is actually concluding with a very strong statement that the cage bird sings for the freedom. So, children, this stanza again is talking about the condition of the African Americans, and here the caged bird is a metaphor that has been used for the African Americans who are living in United States of America. So overall, this fourth stanza highlights the emotional depth of the African Americans, the oppressed class, and its significance as a means of expressing its their longing for freedom. The African Americans and this poet Maya Angelou, as a member of this community, is raising her voice against this oppression, and she is longing for the freedom. And this stanza serves as a reminder of the resilience, the courage, and the unwavering spirit that exists with those who are marginalized and oppressed. They are neglected in the society, they are not being given their rights as they use their voice to advocate for the liberation, equality, freedom, and no racism in the society. Everyone should be treated equal in the society. So this entire stanza 2 and 3 is representing the black African American community.